Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll kick off in about a minute. Of course, it's sending out the notification, let you know we're here. I'm just pulling it up so I can kind of check in on it, make sure we're good. You know me, I'm just gonna go for it. We have broadcasts. Information that strolls across the bottom is there for uh, 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 your choice. If you'd like to be a contributor, we would appreciate it. Uh, that's up to you. You can ignore it as well, but it's there. A lot of times what happens is when people do videos like this, there's a feeling of compelling, like, hey, can we do something since you've given us such wonderful information, that kind of thing. And so it's there. You don't even have to ask for it if you're seeking it. That said, you know me, let's get started. It's 9 Central Standard Time. Wherever you may be in the United States, in the world, I have people from other countries on my Facebook page in particular. So glad to have you join us, or if you're watching this back at any point, I hope what you're about to hear will be a benefit, if nothing else. And, obviously most people on my Facebook page now know what I do for a living, but I've done some form of it in truth for a minute. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And by all means, please share this out. Get this in front of as many people as you possibly can. I think if we have these talks, and I'm doing it around the holiday season for obvious reasons. I've mentioned it a few times when I'm speaking at my place of worship. I just think we have to talk about it. We have to put it out there. We have to say things. Now, I'm one of those people tasked by, well, if you don't believe in God, I understand, but by God to say things that are sometimes very difficult. I understand that. I respect that. I try to say them in a way, not necessarily entertaining, but in a way that will get a hold of your heart and your mind, and maybe, yeah, occasionally make you laugh. Certainly might make you frustrated. Not that that's my intent, but will help you. That's the key. That's the key. And this is one of those subjects, much like talking about money, talking about, anything like that, where that can get really personal and up against us, as I like to say, that can rub up against us, is difficult. It's just difficult. So I take very serious that call, if you will, to say the difficult things, to talk about the difficult subjects, and try to do it in a way. And I appreciate those who have messaged me and texted me and all that. We've talked on the phone, and you've been benefited by these things we do called Let's Chat. That's why I keep doing them. As long as somebody, one person, anybody is benefited, we're going to keep coming back and keep. And there's so many subjects, there's so many angles to any number of subjects we can do. I can do mental health for a month and not even cover all of it. That's how much is out there. Getting into particulars, I got a couple of licensed counselors and psychologists on my page. I can invite them in. I've had talks here and there. People are busy. We live in different time zones, so you know how things can be. But let's get into it. So the first thing out the box is, I talked about last week that mental health is a health issue, right? And so we want to visit that briefly, just to remind ourselves that when we're talking about mental health, it is a health issue. I read a profile, won't get into where I saw it. I read a profile. I'm a single individual. I read a profile on one of these single sites, or if you will, and the person was very explicit, more than one occasion in her write-up, to say, I don't want to deal with somebody with mental issues. And I'm not mad, or just because of what I do for a living. I get it. I perfectly understand. I didn't say anything to the lady, but I get it. I've said in conversation, you never know. You go out on a date, for those who are single, you go out on a date and you could be sitting across from somebody who's struggling with bipolar, schizophrenia, all kind of manias, all kind of things. Okay. And that's always been true. That didn't just start. And I've had conversation with people, obviously I'm not going to tell their business, where in fact, when I described some of those things, they were like, you know what, Gabe? Yeah, I did talk to somebody who was, I think, bipolar. It's not funny, but I'm just saying. So, it can be a startling situation if you're not prepared for it, especially, and you think, oh, this is going really well, and then all of a sudden, wham, you realize, I think this person might not be necessarily in a good space mentally and emotionally. Now, that's one thing. But tonight, I want to focus in particularly on family, and you have a loved one. Now, let me show you the range of this, okay? When I say family. This is from a child who is born with attention deficit hyper disorder, on and on and on and on, to parents who have come to a point, unfortunately, in their lives where they're dealing with dementia, where they're dealing with Alzheimer's. So please understand the range of this. The range. This is rangy. This is not just some little wayward kid that you think need to be just whooped. I think we keep forgetting when we say mental health, it's not just the isolated individual situations that we've dealt with. No, it's the range. When somebody is dealing with dementia, they're not only dealing with a brain situation, they are dealing with a mental, because it is generally believed that our minds are seated in our brains. So if somebody's dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's, they are also dealing with a mental disorder, from forgetfulness to et cetera, et cetera. The functions of the brain are having an impact on the mind. And as I said last week, let me remove a stigma. Yes, I understand some people with mental illness do misbehave. Obviously I can't get into my sessions, but I had a session today, and I do only male clients. So I had a session with a young gentleman today, talking about educating him on his particular diagnosis and all of that kind of thing. I won't get into that. And he had some basic understanding, and then I took it about 100 degrees deeper. Then he realized, and as I shared with him, he was like, oh, okay. And he's the second person in the last 2 days that I've done that with, because here's my first point. You know me, I come right to it. Most of us are simply not educated. When we hear mental illness, we just have a certain thought in our head and we just go with it. We hear a psychopath, a sociopath, which, by the way, I just learned this recently upon getting my job. Those terms are not actual technical terms that is used in the mental health field. They don't really use those terms. Now, you have mental health professionals such as Mary Trump, Donald Trump's niece, who did use those terms, or does use those terms in interviews. But generally speaking, people who are dealing with the mental health aspect of the health industry don't use terms like psychopath and sociopath. Those are, again, not actual, literal, legitimate terms. They're real words, but they're not terms used in the mental health field. They're just not. And I was actually surprised. I was taken back when I was reading the literature that I had to read in prep for the job to know that, because you hear those terms used in social settings frequently. I think that's a sociopath. You can even look up sociopath, psychopath, and you will see very real definitions. Now, there's other terms that are used that obviously reflect those mental illnesses, those mental disorders. But when I'm talking about educated, I'm not talking about just merely a kind of social media education. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I just want to educate us. We have to be careful. If you know you have someone, or you suspect someone in your family is dealing, now notice what I said, from a child all the way to our loving grandparents, parents, and great-grands, whatever the case may be. We may have a family member whom we love dearly, who's in our, or we don't really know, but we've heard they got a mental illness and we kind of stay away. And we're going to cover that too. We just kind of stay away, but we're staying away largely because we don't understand. Let's just be honest. It's not because they're criminal. It's not because they're criminal. Most of the people dealing with some kind of mental disorder or illness is not criminal. They are not criminal. They're just not. And so we have to address that. We have to be honest. People dealing with Alzheimer's, the millions of people who are dealing with that at this point are not necessarily criminal. They can be hard to handle. I'll give you that. It can be hard to hear your loving mother or father forget your name. And by the end, forget that you ever existed. No, I don't have a child named Bob or Gabe. No, and showing them the birth certificates, and you have to have somebody like me, and typically far more educated than I am, hopefully a doctor, mental health professionals come alongside you and say, hey, it's not you. It's not about they don't love you or anything. Their minds in that broken brain, and I say that respectfully, is no longer operating at the capacity that it did when they were raising you. And if you don't get educated, yeah, it's still going to hurt because your mom just said, I don't know who you are. You can't eliminate that, but you can minimize that if you get educated. And excuse me if I get fired up, but long before I got into this job, I knew this to be a very necessary thing that we all needed to know. We need to be educated. Just like it's extremely important to be educated when you get that text or call, please, or you get on social media and you see Auntie so-and-so just said, please pray. And then you start calling around and you find out she's got cancer and she's got lymphoma or whatever. And I would tell you the same thing. You got to get educated. Don't just, oh, Auntie, what stage is it? What stage? It's stage 4. Oh, she got to take chemo. Yeah. No, take it easy. Take it easy. Get educated. While you and swinging and acting crazy, get on some Google, WebMD or something, and look up something. Look some stuff up. Read some stuff. It'll help control your response. It'll help temper you because you have some education. It won't completely annihilate the initial response, but that's the most reasonable and responsible thing to do. And I'm saying do it before you call and contact Aunt Betty. Before you jump on Facebook and start, oh, we praying and we got anointed oil. No disrespect. Keep your anointed oil and get some education. Learn some stuff. Whether it's lymphoma or whatever, cancers or whatever, or it's mental illness. Schizophrenia, I said this last week, used to be you go to what they call an insane asylum. That's what they used to do. They used to put you in a straitjacket and ship you off to an insane asylum and keep you under heavy sedation. At least that's what the movies showed us. But again, the literature that I read in preparation for my job, do you even hear the term insane asylum even on movies? No, there's a reason why they're criminally insane. Yeah, but you don't see them putting people in straitjackets. Think about what I'm saying to you. So we have to let go of the stigma, because when it comes to our family whom we may love and we don't know how to respond to them, the only way you can learn or know how to respond is to learn. Let's go to something. Let's go to a different thing. I worked also in special needs. Okay, I was eventually a special needs teacher. I worked as a teacher assistant for years right here in Louisiana, and then went to Dallas, Texas, and worked in Dallas Independent School District as a special needs teacher. I had children with autism, which, by the way, is classified as a mental illness. Now they don't call it autism; they call it the autistic spectrum anyway. Try not to go to my job too much here, but autistic spectrum. That is not just physical. You can see the autistic disposition, but that's also mental. Anything going on with your brain is likely causing something going on with your mind. Okay? Down syndrome. These people have these wonderful people, men, women, boys, and girls who are God's children in terms of creation. They may not be Christian, but they're God's children in terms of creation, even though they may not look right, sound right to us, but they are God's blessed create. They're not more blessed, and let's stop that nonsense as well. I'm not saying that. Just because they have autism or Down syndrome, they're God's super special. There's nowhere in scripture that says that, and we really shouldn't say that God sees them a certain way. Now, I know you don't like that because you've been telling your child with autism all of their lives that God cherishes them above all others. You don't have a right to do that. Stop. Say you cherish them above all others, but you can't speak for God and say that God, because they have autism, made them better than anyone else. That's not even proper thinking biblically. That's not proper. So stop. I'm telling you, stop. Because if you're speaking for God and you're speaking wrong, guess what the Bible says? You're sinning. That's a lie, and you're sinning. Now, you may not like that because you think God doesn't mind if you try to encourage somebody, but if you're going to lie, don't you think it's best not to lie on God? There is nothing in scripture that says that somehow they're better than everyone else because unfortunately they were born with some abnormality. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. You don't. And if you're doing it, stop. And unless you get back that what you do up with scripture, then I would advise you to stop. I am a pastor, remember? So this is partly what I do. That said, when it comes to mental illness, the number one thing, I could spend the whole time just talking about education, because what does education do for us? Well, the first thing I already said is, one, it educates us. Number two, it helps us to control our emotional responses. I have a lot of people say things like this. Gabe, I just can't do it. Gabe, I just can't do it. I don't know what to do if I was married to somebody. Here we go. And maybe they got into a car accident and they just, were quadriplegic or paraplegic. I just don't know. I mean, I love them, but I just don't know. Now, that's a physical thing. But what happened if they got into a car accident? Their bodies came out fine, but their minds didn't. They ended up with some mental circumstance. Would you love them any less? Would you not wish to offer care and provide care? Now, I mentioned I would come to it. Staying away from them, would you avoid them like a plague? Would you see them and kind of, hey, cuz, and feel all bad and crinkle all up and shrivel all up? And when you give them a hug, you act like they're going to break. So you just kind of give them a little side hug and rub their little shoulder. Yeah, okay, grandma. Because grandma's mind has now, unfortunately, because of Alzheimer's or dementia. So now you barely even want to talk to her. Or you don't even want to be in the room with her because she's scattered in her thoughts. Why? I think largely because you're not educated and there is unnecessary fear. Look, I'm not here to pull any punches. I never do. So my first question would be, if I see you doing that, now I may not walk up on you, but my first thought would be, did you get educated about what's going on with grandma? Are you educated about the child with Down syndrome? Are you educated about the child with in the autistic spectrum? Are you educated about the child with attention deficit hyper disorder? Are you educated about the person, the man, the woman who's classified as bipolar, schizophrenic? Have you done a little bit of research? Just go to a Google search and type in schizophrenia. Do you know you can type in schizophrenia classified by some as one of the worst mental disorders. Okay, let's say it is. I'm not going to say I agree, but let's say it is. Do you know you can look up the medicine they take? Do you know you can see what they're up against in terms of symptoms? You can see what they're dealing with in terms of effects in particular, and how people's responses and reactions to them affect them. You know that? Do you know it might explain to you, watch this one, I'm gonna really get you ready? Why that man who is 24 years old or 25 or 32 and he's strong, but you don't know he's dealing with schizophrenia? It might not excuse, but explain why he's not out working 3 jobs to satisfy your need for him to be working. It might explain why he's still living with his mama. And I'm not saying that they're not high functioning people with schizophrenia, which is why I don't know if I would necessarily agree that schizophrenia is the worst, because there are people who are pretty high functioning. And even those people, obviously I'm a mental health specialist, oftentimes have to get ongoing rest of their lives help. They have to get help. They have to get help. And well, Gabe, you know, okay, but it's one thing to say it when you're watching me on a broadcast. It's another thing to come across that person at the grocery store. And before you catch yourself, you literally are acting like schizophrenia, bipolar, and all the rest is contagious. So here's the next thing I want to say. In your getting educated, you will find out that mental illness is not contagious. Now, it can be passed down from generation to generation, but it is not in and of itself contagious. In other words, if somebody who's standing next to you, you find out is bipolar, you don't have to take off and run because you're not going to catch bipolar. I don't know if you didn't know that, but now you know. You can't catch it. They can't rub your arm and you walk away bipolar. You can't. It's not possible. Because if that's the case, I'm bipolar. I'm also schizophrenic, dementia, Alzheimer's. I've dealt with people across the whole, autistic. I've dealt with autism. I've dealt with ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder. And I am not oppositionally defiant. I've dealt with all of that. And it didn't rub off on me. I don't have to take a shower every day to try to get that ODD off me. Oh, by the way, OCD, you know, compulsive disorder, it's a disorder. It's a mental disorder. Now, for some reason, we seem to be okay in some sense with that one, unless you're married to that person. Sorry, I just kidding. That person can be a little rough to handle, I understand. And I'm not suggesting that anyone with any of these things, which is why you got to get educated. Like, education will tear down walls. Do you understand how serious this is? And I'm talking about family. Education tears down walls. Education allows you to actually reach out to them physically, emotionally, mentally. Okay, you know, and I understand. I'm not trying to beat you up. Maybe there's some questions you need answered. Hey, man, message me. Ma'am, sir, message me. Let's talk. I'll get you connected to the information. I'll do what I can to educate you. Now let's deal with those who are dealing with it in their houses. Okay, let's narrow this thing down. First of all, it is frustrating. And if anybody tells you otherwise, they're lying. We don't sugarcoat nothing here. Do you understand? It's frustrating. First of all, let me say it this way, and no disrespect fathers, but to mothers. If you have a child and your child, as they're going through the test, you know, before they release the child to go with you home, and the child was diagnosed Down syndrome, autistic, a hole in the heart, whatever it is, but in particular with a mental disorder, with a mental issue, or the doctors tell you there's a possibility that the child may have a learning disability because they came out as a preemie. before you get your anointed oil or before you cuss the doctor out, take a deep breath. I don't know what it, and I'll never know what it is to birth a child. I'm not talking about that. But the last thing you want to do is go off. You take a deep breath, cry as many tears as you need to cry, and begin to ask the questions. If you are a believer and you have a particular faith, I'm not saying just a Christian, hey, pray if that's what you do, by all means. But the one thing you don't want to do is start beating up the people you're going to need. You're going to need the doctors. You're going to need the nurses. You're going to need the people like myself who can help you to acclimate to this child who is precious that you're going to take home or that you did take home. And I say this, and I say it lovingly, some of you have grown kids who have these particular type of health issues, mental health issues, and you still have not overcome. You're still almost worse than cussing because you're telling them God this, God that, and I know people who've been through this who are my age, and their parents have in some cases passed on, but just refuse to acknowledge that their child, now grown, old enough to have children, was actually, and I'm trying to be respectful here, I'm doing my best, but the baby boom generation, and let's be real, the generation before, the golden generation, the generation before the baby boomers, particularly in the African American community, because we still kind of don't statistically trust counseling. They didn't handle these things well, and they just said it was demons, and they said all kind of stuff like that. I have to say it, and I'm not trying to talk about your grandmas and your grandpas. I'm not trying to, but let's be real. They were wrong. We're not demon possessed. You dumping a ton of oil on your heads and on your kids' heads and on your grandkids' heads does not work. I'm not saying nothing's wrong. There is something wrong. There is a disorder, which means out of order. And they need to get the proper help from somebody like me and many, many others who were in the business of what they call mental health rehabilitation. It's the new term now. Last several years. They really need you to stop praying at them. You said on for them, but you're praying at them. And they really need you to go. I have one young man whose mom is of a particular faith. I won't say the faith because she doesn't speak for the entire faith, but I am very familiar with this particular, it's not necessarily Christianity, but I am very familiar with this particular faith. And I know that they really, really are not in favor of the medical world, medicine and things of that nature. I'll leave it right there because if I say too much, you'll kind of figure out who I'm talking about. So her son, technically adopted son, really could use medication to help him with his mental illness. And he says, no, mom wants me to get it. And I was like, no, not her reaction didn't. And once I found out what faith they're in, now I don't go talking about Jesus, just everybody calm down. But once I found out, they told me what faith they're in, I pretty much like, yeah, okay, he hasn't had medication. So part of what I'm trying to do with this family is to educate them. Trying to educate them. Trying to educate not just the son, the adoptive son, but I'm also trying to educate his mother. I'm trying to educate his mother. I can see in the niece, 4 years old, some things that tells me now, of course, she's a kid. And see, this is the stuff that was said when I was a child and was said by the generation before my parents. Oh, they're just being a kid, just being rambunctious. Now, you know me, I'm transparent. I know some people get uncomfortable. It's okay. I suffer from attention deficit disorder. I don't have the hyper piece, but I suffer from attention deficit disorder. Right? Now, I share that with my clients. I share that with my son. He has attention deficit hyper disorder. I grew up, and I love my parents dearly, obviously, but I was not diagnosed as a child. And probably because I didn't have the hyper piece, I had the just attention deficit disorder piece. I was just as fidgety. I was just all over the place, as you can notice, all over the place. I literally had my client today cracking up because I said, because we did telehealth, which means, you talk on the phone, not face to face. And so I told him, man, I'm talking to you and I'm moving my hands right now. And he laughed and said, yeah, I do that too. So that's why I share my own situation, because I want them to know, particularly if they're dealing with ADD or ADHD, I want them to know I understand what they're up against. Well, the other client yesterday, and he's tearing up my furniture and he's doing this, that, and the other. He's this, that, and the other. And I said, okay, Mom, that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. He needs medicine because he honestly, truly cannot help he can't help it. Attention deficit disorder means his mind is not his brain is not working properly, and the part that controls attention span, etc., therefore in his mentality is not operating at the level that it needs to operate. And the medicine, and I know the taboo stuff, and I know all about, they used to just give our kids Ritalin and set them in the corner. Obviously, I've heard all that. Obviously, I'm a psychology major. I heard all that. But let's just be real. When you watching somebody, even grown, who literally just cannot sit still, you can say whatever you want about medicine. And I suspect that most of you who are still passing along those things from 50 years ago, 30 years ago, are not educated. I'm not trying to be rude, but stop. Stop. Get educated first before you start passing along what happened 2 or 3 generations ago. Stop. Do you know that I have had family members ultimately die because they didn't want to go to the hospital? And yes, I know how Black people were treated when it came to going to the doctor. My family is from the South. My mom born in Arkansas. My dad born in Mississippi. Met in California. I know. One born in 1950. The other one born in 1951 in the South. Don't you think I heard that stuff? Of course I did. But every single one of my family members, my mother, my father, my grandmother, my grandfather, had to go to the doctor. They had to. My uncles and aunts had to go to the doctor and had to take medicine. I have to go to the doctor. My son goes to the doctor. So at some point or another, I understand the history, even vaccinations, and I'm not getting into that tonight. But when it comes to mental health, we still struggle. And I'm not just talking to Black folks, but for a second, give me your ear, Black folks. We have got to work through our sentiments and feelings. It's one thing to go because we had to, and while we were there, we found out what was wrong. But then after that, ain't nothing wrong with me. Okay, yeah, they lying. That's a conspiracy. They just trying to make me think that I'm crazy. Well, first of all, again, we don't use terms like crazy unless we're talking about in a slang way. No, we're not talking about you being crazy. But if you know, and I said this to a client before, that you're literally fighting against yourself in your own mind, guess what? You potentially have a mental disorder. If you find yourself every day fighting yourself just to function, I don't mean, I want to eat this burger, but that's my diet. Yeah, I understand that. No, I'm talking about anything and everything, from what to put on to just basic functions of life, and you find yourself fighting against yourself, you potentially may have a mental disorder. You may have, well, again, I want to get involved. So again, I don't really have to go any other place. Education, education, education. And when you are living with someone who is dealing with this, I told a family member who brought another family member into the house, and I'm being very careful here. I told this dear family member to me, who had brought in another dear family member into the home, who has one of these, see how I'm doing this? I'm not telling you what it is, who has one of these diagnoses, has to take very serious medication. Well, I know the rule. It's family. I've talked about this before. It's family. It's just what you do. Hey, don't be on the streets. Come in the house. Right? Okay? I told you my family's from the South. This is what you do. Well, this particular family member is dealing with, and has been for decades, major mental health issue. This particular family member who ended up talking to me about the choice to bring the other family member in said, it ain't really working out. I said, respectfully, lovingly, because you should have called me and I could have educated you about the mental illness that person is dealing with, because you can't just deal with bipolar. You can't just act like bipolar is somebody who got a broken leg and the leg is mending. If you're bipolar, there's no cure. If you're schizophrenic, as far as I know, there's no cure. There's no cure for dissociative disorders and all of that. There's no cure for autism. They're looking, they're searching, they're testing, they're working on it. But for right now, there's no cure for dementia. Excuse me. There's no cure for Alzheimer's. So if you bring this person into your home, because that's what families do, you gotta get educated. You have a son or daughter. They're now 18. They're 21. You're ready for them to get out. But on the same token, you just know something ain't quite right. Well, now they're grown, and because you want them to get out, you just, no, you good, get out. But when they were children growing up, you didn't want anybody like me to come and say, hey, looks like your son is dealing with something. Have you gotten him checked out? What? I'm a believer in Jesus. Don't you come at me like that. The devil, Satan, the Lord rebuke you. Now your son is in his 20s and he's doing all kind of crazy stuff because he's technically grown, but he has a disorder, or she has a disorder, and I don't even want to start describing the kind of things that can happen. Babies, I mean, just stuff that could happen to anybody with a quote unquote normally functioning brain and mind. So can you imagine if they're up against bipolar, schizophrenic, and all this, and they're grown, and their moms and dads and their guardians and the people taking care of them didn't want to have to deal with the stigma? So they didn't go get educated. They didn't want to hear the doctor. They didn't want to talk about no counselor because they thought a counselor was a sign of defeat. They thought getting counseling was somehow some act of weakness. And if they do it, or they're going to make their child feel bad. Right now, there's a grandma and a grandpa telling their child, their son or daughter, don't you go get that child tested. The Satan is a lie. I prayed over that child. Don't you go tell him nothing. God is my God, and he got it all in control, and you just gotta just be tough. I know I was raised in that era of just be tough. The fix of all things, mental, emotional, physical health issues, was just be tough. Just be tough. That's all we ever said. Tough love, tough. Tough, just be tough, just be firm. You just gotta tell them, put them in their place. No, some people do the work. I was going to look up the statistics, but I didn't get a chance to. There are millions of Americans and people all over the world who are up against some very real challenges mentally, and just notion of just be tough on them, kick them out, bring them in, just do stuff You're fighting an uphill battle. You're not educated, and you got an attitude, and you got a preconceived notion, and you're wrong in what you're doing, and you're going to do more harm than good, whether you kick them out or bring them in or whatever you do. By all means, if you are a person who prays, once again, pray. You're not hearing me. How am I tell you not to pray and I'm a darn pastor? That don't even make sense. But by all means, there's more than just praying. I believe faith without works is dead. That's what I believe if you want to go Bible. So you believe God can help you to help them. Well, I'm telling you, one of the works that you must do is earnestly do some research. Get in contact with mental health professionals, just like you would with doctors and nurses, and have some very candid conversations. Cry your tears. Throw the thing against the wall because you're mad, because you're frustrated. Be emotional, for God's sake. Ain't nobody got no problem with that. The problem is when after you get through being emotional, you don't take time to educate. Now watch this. You ready? I'm almost done. It's not just get educated about the particular illness, mental illness that the person is up against. You've got to get educated about the person and the mental illness that they're up against. What do you mean, Gabe? In other words, it's not just that person is not the mental illness. No, they have two different things. They are not schizophrenia. They have it. They are not all that is bipolar. They have it. They are not crazy. Oh, I was coming to it. You knew I was coming to it. You knew I was coming to it. They are not crazy. Now, if you're using that again in terms of you're talking to somebody and y'all clowning around, look, it is what it is. But if you suspect, you're not a counselor, but you've done some research, you've seen them sitting there rocking, mumbling, eyes are disoriented and going all over the place. You're trying to get their attention. They're 5 feet away from you. Sally, huh? They're checked out all the time. Any little noise. And believe it or not, I know you ain't gonna like this, but conspiracy theories. I'm not saying that everyone who believes in conspiracy theories has a mental illness, but what I am saying is these people who have mental illnesses are vulnerable to conspiracy theories. Why? Hallucinations, delusions. So you can imagine conspiracy theories will rock their world. Do you understand how serious? I'm trying to stay away from the serious stuff, but I'm gonna have to talk about it a little bit. So you bring this person into your home, or this person is being raised by you, and you're just absolutely refusing to acknowledge that clearly something isn't quite right, except when you're mad, when you're ticked off, and now you're blaring at them because they've made you mad and they're frustrated. And again, this mother, bless her heart, ooh, and he just makes me mad and I just got to walk away. And I said, Mom, some of what he's doing, he's sitting right there, 5 feet away from me, 2 feet away from me. Mom, some of what he's doing, he's really, truly not doing on purpose. Now, the child is adolescent, a pre-adolescent. So some of the stuff he's going to do is just pre-adolescence. It's a kid. But when you watch, and the whole time I'm doing my session, I do this one face to face, the kid is all over the place. Literally. Literally. Every once in a while, I'll say, okay, I need you to focus right here. But for the most part, the kid's all over the place. And so when I bring the mom into the session, okay, stop moving. And I'm sitting there like, okay, Mom, I really need you to get this. This kid is not going to stop moving. He's just not going to. He literally cannot stop. He just can't. We don't, let me go this way. I think for some of us, we don't really understand that our brain, not just our mind, our choices. We think everything is a choice. And that's the problem. Some of us are insensitive to people. We lack empathy because we don't understand that there are real issues in this life that people do not control. I know you're hearing that for the first time in your life. And you're 900 years old. I know you just heard that for the first time because you thought that from the time you turn 18 until you die, that you are in complete control. Do you know that there is a section in most department stores for grown people diapers called Depends? Because there is a point when a grown man or grown woman can actually lose control of their bowels for all kind of reasons. So if a grown person who was potty trained 30 years ago could unfortunately go through a circumstance and lose control that they have for 30 years of their bowels, when they go to the bathroom, then don't you think that they can also lose control? Now, I've been saving this one for last because this one is not, I'm born with it necessarily. And even schizophrenia, in other words, you don't necessarily have to be born with, but post-traumatic stress disorder. And for ladies in pregnancy, postpartum, if I'm not mistaken, is what it's called. So post-traumatic stress disorder, look it up. I won't go into a lot of details and symptoms and things, but this is something that any and all of us can experience. And no, now I live next to the Air Force base, but no, it's not just soldiers. It's not just those who've seen combat. It's not just police officers and EMTs and people who are working in those industries. No, you can go through a car accident. You can get the unexpected call of a loved one dying unexpectedly, who was relatively young, and literally go through a post-traumatic, literally the name tells you, stress disorder. In other words, hearing the news of that loved one dying, who was, let's say, only 32 years old, died in a car wreck, all of a sudden, on their way to come see you for the holidays, which is why we did holidays last week. And now that stressor breaks your mind. And that stress level is so dramatic, so traumatic, that after you've heard the news, you go into and you end up suffering with a disorder. So you who may be frowning on those who struggle with disorders. Well, Gabe, I'm sorry, and I understand what you're saying, and I know we need to be educated, but that's just not me. That's just not me. Well, I'm here to tell you that we can suffer through things so serious and unexpected that it can actually cause a disorder called post-traumatic stress disorder. For all of you, drama-free. I know people, my ex-brother-in-law came back from Afghanistan. I believe it's Afghanistan. My ex can correct me on that. And they told me when he got back what he was doing. They told me, obviously no names, that he was staring out the sliding glass door window to the backyard in the middle of the night. I can't remember if they said he was talking to himself. I can't remember. And unfortunately, listen to me, he's a self-medicator. Now, I know some of you have positions on weed and alcohol. Okay, I'm not here to not because I know it's legal in certain states now. And of course, alcohol has been legal for decades, long time. Or is it what, 100 years maybe? I can't remember now. Alcohol is legal. But Many people who don't get diagnosed for their mental disorders, mental health issues, will self-medicate. They'll self-medicate. And unfortunately, you self-medicate too much, you can actually cause more problems. You can cause more problems depending on what you use for self-medication. Now, obviously, one of the very popular self-medications for people dealing with PSDs and all that kind of stuff is marijuana. Again, I'm not here to judge it. I'm not here to judge it. So don't take me down that rabbit hole. Now, if you want to post scriptures and you want to go on and on about Jesus, I'm not going there tonight. We can talk off the thing. That's your business. Because I do know people who have a medical card. See, let me just be honest with you, and I'm really done. What bothers the daylights out of me, first of all, I hate bullies. I don't know if I've ever told you all that. And if I didn't, let me tell you, I hate bullies. I don't care how you bully it. I hate it. I can't stand it. And I think a lot of people get bullied subtly, especially as adults. So we sit back and we make comments about people and we don't stop to try to understand what they've been through. And absolutely, absolutely. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, absolutely can definitely cause PTSDs. Absolutely. Absolutely. So because it's traumatic. Imagine a child, right, who's been molested for years. That's traumatic. I'm trying not to say stuff like that because I know people get uncomfortable, but look, man, I'm in a business like this. I've been in this business for decades as a minister. So, and I've heard this stuff, and it takes a long time, if ever, to overcome. And those people can get into self-medication. So even though, yes, I am a Christian, yes, and I know what the Bible says, yes, I do. I've read it from cover to cover multiple times, more than the average person. Yes. But I think since we're not Jesus, we have to be very careful to actually care to understand what people are up against. Now, I'm going to get in trouble, but that's okay. I actually believe that a lot of this gender stuff, and there's all kind of mental disorders with gender. I know you don't like that because you finally accepted that your nephew, niece, son, daughter, they mom, I identify this way, and I love you, baby, and you post pictures of them. They were born as a girl, but you post pictures of them as a boy, and you want the world to embrace. Okay, I'm not here to get into, but it is called, I believe, gender dysphoria. I believe. Don't quote me on that. So there are all kind of disorders, man, that are going on, and man is just I'm not calling women men, but I'm just saying there's all kind of things that can happen, and a lot of times, even though they don't like to talk about it, those who have gone through gender confusion have been abused. Not all, but many of them who struggle with gender confusion have gone through abuse. And how dare we not care? For all of my Christian friends who are ready to drop 22 scriptures on me, where is your compassion? Where is your love? Where is your, yes, my brother, patience? Where is it? Christian or not? Where is it? I don't mean just toleration. I mean, and even with toleration, there still should be education. How do you even know what to tolerate unless you get educated? Now, look, I can't keep up with all the initials and all that. I'm not talking about that. I can't keep up with that. But I'm talking about make a concerted effort to recognize, just like a person could be in a wheelchair or have a cast, a person can suffer with cancer and lose their hair, and you can visibly see their condition. Well, there are people who you can't necessarily see. You can't look them in the eye and go, schizophrenia. It doesn't mean they're not dealing with it. Here's that big one, depression. If you really want to know the one that gets most of us, And I said us that can get us is depression. Depression. And oftentimes we don't even care to acknowledge depression until it's extreme. When somebody is down, girl, you just need to get up. Okay, but how long has she been? She asked some questions. How long has she been down? Well, I don't know exactly. She ain't down just today. Yesterday, she been down for like 6 months. Well, you know what? Her husband died. My husband died too. She just need to get up. Good Lord, man. Seriously? Well, Gabe, I was sad, and we were married for 20 years, and I just prayed to the Lord, and I just got up, and I was okay. I did some shopping, and went out with some girlfriends, and I've been trying to invite her out. Well, back off. If that's how you're going to be, listen to me. With all due respect, and I'm trying to be kind, leave her alone. Leave him alone. If that's the best you can do, because, hey, you got over it, and so you think they should just get over it, well, then leave them alone. You get over it and leave them alone. Because they may actually have clinical depression. They may need medication. They may need what's called psychotherapy. I know that word psycho scares you because of the movie Psycho. But psychotherapy is really just they need to talk. And I don't mean to you because you're rude. You're obnoxious. You're no good for them. You do need to leave them alone. Because your remedy ain't going to fix it. They just need to talk. Yeah, they need to talk to somebody in a therapeutic situation, like mental health specialists like myself and many others. They need to talk to somebody a pastor, pastoral counselor. Now, pastoral counseling is a very specific thing. Not everybody can do it. Not every pastor is trained or equipped to do it. So it may not be your particular pastor. My pastor has openly said, I don't do the counseling thing. Much respect. I've been doing it for a very long time. It just is what it is. So I have offered. And just because I have a job doesn't mean I'm not offering. And you may not need 10 sessions. You may really need to talk about that sexual abuse you suffered when you were 8, 9, 10 years old. You may just really need to get it off your chest, get mad, go off, cuss a little bit, do some stuff so that you can be okay. And you may need to be, some further recommendation to go and get some more help. You just might. You just might. See? So look, stigma and all that kind of stuff, you do have to ease up on that, on yourself. You may be listening to me, and then finally my words directed. If you are thinking to yourself, I don't care how old you are, 70, 80, 90, 122, I don't care. And you're listening to me going, Gabe, I might be up against some stuff. I lost my child. I lost my grandchild. I lost a job. I lost my husband. And he died 5 years ago, and I just can't seem to get it together. I've gone back to work, Gabe, but man, I just feel down all the time. I'm still crying. You probably need to talk to in a therapeutic setting. And with telehealth and all that stuff, people can come to your house, and it just depends on how you're set up. Now, obviously, I'm in a paid position, so I can offer pastoral care. Even if I'm not your pastor, I'm willing to talk to you. Call me, text me, message me. And if we're chatting and I really feel like maybe you really could use a conversation, we change numbers and we can have a conversation. Or if you're someone who's dealing with mental illness, diagnosed, or you suspect that they have it, contact me. I can shoot you some websites that you can go and read and self-educate. Why have all this information at your fingertips? I am now broadcasting at the same time to YouTube and Facebook. That's how far we've come. That's how far we've come. So don't tell me that you can't possibly go and find the information you need. And I mean professional journals uploaded on YouTube. Professional journals, not just some quack doctor, some self-help guru. No, I mean professional, full-on journals. If that's your druthers. I'm done. Gabe, what do we do in family? I think I said it 1,000 times, but let me say it 1,001. Get educated. Get educated. Okay, Gabe, what about if I get educated and I'm still struggling? Well, that makes sense. Don't quit. Don't necessarily give up. Seek help. Get educated. Seek some help from professionals who can begin to teach you, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, or what's got to happen. You've got to be re-educated, especially parents and children, grandchildren. Well, he being disrespectful. Well, the kid is suffering from Tourette's. He don't mean to use profane words around you. Believe it or not, when he spew off a cuss word out of the blue, just out of nowhere, he has Tourette's syndrome. And you just beating on the poor child and scolding the child and taking the child's cell phone and sending the child to his room or her room, and they might suffer from Tourette's. How about this one? They have dyslexia, which is a learning disability, and it hasn't been discovered yet that they actually looking at letters upside down and backwards, and you punishing the child. Well, they might have dyslexia. And obviously I was a special needs teacher, so I'm familiar with that too. Anyway, I'm all up and down this thing. So listen, be compassionate, but don't just be kind of frivolous with it. No, go get educated. If you really want to be compassionate towards people, get educated about what they're up against. Ask some sincere questions. Ask some real sincere. When I mean sincere, meaning don't be mean. What's wrong with you? No. Hey, excuse me, mom, dad. I don't know who the family member is. Yeah, it could be your friend too, but we could do that another time. Son, come here. Yeah, dad. Are you having trouble paying attention? Yeah. Do you find it hard to be still? Yeah. The teachers keep saying that I move a lot. Yeah, they told me. Even when I'm talking to you now, are you finding it hard to pay attention? Yeah, dad. I'm trying to listen. I'm trying. Now you don't go, you need Jesus? The child is probably suffering from attention deficit disorder. Go and get the child tested and get over yourself. I know you were raised in a different era and kids just need to be still. Do you know those kids existed? Good evening to you. Those kids existed in my parents' generation. Do you know those kids existed in my grandparents' generation? But they went undiagnosed, probably got whooped. And if you go back far enough, unfortunately, probably was even beat to death. I know. They were probably beat to death in some cases. He just wouldn't mind. He just wouldn't sit still. And I just had enough, and he's just being disrespectful and went too far. Hence Child Protective Service, right? And beat the child to death. Beat the child to death. Because the parent could potentially have a disorder as well. I know whole families dealing with it. And it ain't the time for everybody to get all embarrassed and start acting a fool. Yeah, I got acting a fool from my upbringing. But you're acting a fool. It's not even acting, it's acting. You acting a fool. So stop acting a fool and get some help. And if you know your child and your grandchild are both struggling with some of the things that you seen your grandchild do what your child was doing, look, they both need help. Now, your child might be resistant because they're grown, but do your best, be gentle, be respectful, be kind, and you might be able to get that grandchild some help that they need. All right. Love you. If you have questions, concerns, if you want information, look, don't hesitate to contact me. Yes, I'm busy. Okay, but who isn't? Who isn't? I get on here just about every Thursday. So clearly I'm willing to make the time to talk about it. So I will make the time. Matter of fact, I got to do research for a client tomorrow to get him some information. Again, everybody's male. So I'm not telling you anything. Everybody's male. All my clients are male. But I need to get a gentleman some information who's struggling with some anxiety, stress. All of that are mental health issues. I didn't even get into those, and I'm not going to keep you any longer. So look, if you're dealing with stress, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, thank you for those who have commented tonight on YouTube and on Facebook. If you're dealing with any of those things, you know people who are, and you really want to help them, you may not be able to, they can't live with you because some of those disorders are so powerful and it causes such reactions. You may not be able to, I know you love them, but you can't bring them in your house. You just can't. I'm trying to let it go, but you can't do it. And I know you mean well, but maybe you need to, I've given this advice before. You need to see if it's a halfway house. Is there some kind of facility? I know that word just gets under your skin, but look, if you are an elderly man, an elderly woman, for example, and it's a grandchild who is going 100 miles an hour, you may not be, I know you old school and you snatch them and all that, but they don't really need snatching. They need to be educated. They need to be diagnosed. They probably need some medication, and they need somebody who's able-bodied, who can handle that rambunctiousness as we think it is. No, it's attention deficit hyper disorder, and they really don't mean to tear up your beautiful furniture that you've earned, that you finally bought when you retired after 30 years on your job. They don't mean to tear up your couch and your armoire and all of that. They don't really mean it, but they can't help it. They truly can't. And I'm telling you this as a mental health specialist. They truly can't. And if you're not careful, you will create a monster because you'll try to parent them like this is 1960 and it ain't gonna wash. And because we live in the day we live in, they'll get loose on you around teen years, and then you'll be calling me as a pastor talking about please pray for my grandson and my granddaughter because they're going absolutely bonkers. And I'm gonna remember to myself, didn't I tell you that kid might have attention deficit? I ain't gonna say it to you, but I'll be thinking it. All right, I'm done. Have a great evening. We'll do next week as well, and I believe we'll probably call it a year, 2021, and then we'll start fresh. So we'll do next week. I'll probably do another mental health topic in regarding to some other. Trust me, there's a lot to do. Invite people, share this out, please. Get this out on your page. Get this out to as many as you can who may be up against some things. I try not to get into specifics because this is such a broad subject, like I said, from a little kid all the way to your grandparents who are dealing with Alzheimer's, stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, you name it, depression. It's so much in there. So if you have something particular that you would like me to address or get you some information, contact me. Until next time, have a great rest of your week.